To consider it art, what would make the difference between art and a graffiti writer?
Well, I made it art through the way I contextualized it, and I made Dachau art. If I'm interested in the zeitgeist. This book is better designed than the green one. Kurlansky, I only took, I think, one shot of this because, number one, it was very cold, and December, January era I was photographing. Secondly, we were chased by cops, so but I have the ability to catch certain moments. This historically turns out to be a very important photograph in the history of graffiti. It was the first time, I forgot what this is called even, and Barbara and Eva 62 from 62nd Street are women. It's outlining the first recorded, this was the first book on, so again, context, right? These children never went to art school. How did they learn? Well, I think they learned it from the subways, from looking at, again, I love the zeitgeist of this, so.
New York has changed and everything has changed.
Yeah, oh yes. And these were done, see, this is the photograph that the original book cropped this picture. This is the 136th Street firehouse. Very important to me in the whole kind of pentagram. I don't bother to, but they cropped this picture and put it as a double spread with this going down the gutter of the book without telling or asking me, which really is Central Park. To me, and I did catch that one. This is also, it turns out, another historic picture. I'm concerned about the beautiful late afternoon winter light, but I caught the moons and the vanguards, which again, historically, are two very important. First time they were ever. So it depends what you're looking for. Again, Brooklyn. None of it is pose. It's the yards, end of the line. So anyhow, this did launch my career in publishing. The green one is quite valuable. That edition and there's another edition to the left in brown envelope signed by Mailer and me. Those go for $350. My son paid, I think, $275. But in the end, it was a 10-day assignment. But I'm an iconic figure in this now literal global world. But what I was saying is that the world of graffiti, like everything else, is not what it used to be. It's huge. But in those days, as you saw from that famous picture, was mostly Latino. New York Magazine was an insert into the New York Herald Tribune, and he redesigned it as an independent standing magazine. And one of the first freestanding editions, he phoned me and said he wanted a portrait of Andy Warhol. And at this point, most of the designers and art directors I'm working with trusted me to go and do the pictures without standing, breathing down my neck, looking through my camera, which was fine. So he assigns me Andy Warhol in the Silver Factory. The silver factory in 1964, 65 happened to be on East 47th Street in a commercial building between 3rd and 2nd. I happened to live on the same north-south block, 3 blocks north.
Yeah, 50th.
I couldn't afford an assistant, so I trundled my Hasselblad, one light. I don't think I had a Polaroid back or anything.
Okay.
3 blocks, no big deal. Everybody knew Andy from Max's Kansas City, But I was never part, nor did I ever become part of his inner entourage. All that didn't appeal to me, and I had an appointment. I turn up, anyhow, going up this rickety freight elevator.
Yeah.
I hear loud rock music, smell of marijuana. It's like going at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to a discotheque, which I had been to, Andy meets me and he said, he's always ultra polite. So he says, look, I'm filming with Edie Sedgwick, poor little rich girl. Here's my office. Make yourself comfortable. Move anything, So nothing, this is here, is stereo, but none of these items, including, this is the red sofa on which he had filmed. Saw the red sofa over there. It's on wheels, so I pushed it. And then, I saw this thing. And this is I think a light from a discotheque. And then I saw this. So, and I had my, naturally, House of Blood's on a tripod. And I got my one light bouncing out of an umbrella. About 45 minutes later, Andy comes in, and he's ultra polite and ultra permissive. He literally would have done, and he said, what can I do? And I knew that if I'd said, take your trousers off, he would have done. I said, look, you must be tired. Why don't you relax on the sofa and I'll take some pictures. And not having a Polaroid, but I shot one roll of 120 film. Right. It was 12 square pictures, which format I don't particularly like, but in any event, I figure it can be, the weakness of the Hasselblad is that you start with 6 by 6, but you have to crop it so you end up with less, right, page. So you lose 20 or 30% of the possible picture, compared with what I eventually got, which is a Mamiya revolving back 6 by 7 RB67 that you can rotate the back vertical or horizontal for a full frame picture. And the Mamiya lens is just as good as the Hasselblad. In any event, I'll make this story. I think the story may be in the book here. About a week later, I get a proof from the magazine, and out of courtesy, I take it over. And he loved it. And he said, John, this is the best picture of me I have ever taken. Right. And I said, but Andy, remember, I came with my Hasselblad and try, He said, yes, and he went into the whole thing about how the subject is very much part of the picture taking. So we ended up that he said, look, I'm going to, because he was very much into self-portrait. He said, I'm going to say that Andy took the picture, but you can keep the copyright. I have resold that picture. You want to guess roughly how much I made on it?
Tens of thousands, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think close to 35.
Yeah. Now, okay.
The point is, you never know when you click that shutter what impact it's going to have. I mean, you have feelings.
Well, I mean, for that matter, could you have guessed that Andy Warhol would have been now considered the most famous
No.
artist in history?
No,
right?
because
You
if
would never...
I could have taken a crate of Andy Warhol, of Campbell's, tomato soup cans,
Right.
and he would have signed anything,
Right.
and they'd be worth hundreds. Well, I got some nice pictures, actually, of Edie Sedgwick.
Edie, and you shot Andy 3 times. But have you heard...
I did her in black and white.
Because Billy Name
Yes.
had the silver apartment, and that's why Andy wanted to make his factory silver. And
Which
Billy,
one is Billy Name? One of...
he might be in that
I
picture.
think he is.
But he also found the couch on 47th Street.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Billy Name found the couch, and he also put up the foil.
Never published. I don't even know who this is. One of them is Gerard Malanga, and I think one of them may be Billy Name.
You were working with the Japanese.
Yes. I couldn't. The Japanese are such funny people. I couldn't get them to buy. I mean, they have a show, or they did, they reconstructed the silver factory at that Mori Museum, modern museum in Tokyo.
Yeah.
Said they didn't have a budget to buy, and I should show these pictures and show the film. But they never did. Edie committed suicide.
That building was torn
and
down.
they moved to you. In fact, they went to Union Square, and I photographed him. This picture was taken much later, and the curator of, I don't know whether you heard her say this, at the New Jersey State Museum, Margaret O'Reilly, when she first came here to look at my work, she saw this picture. I don't know if it was on the wall or whatever. And she said, "My God, you took that picture, man." She said, "I had," and she said, "I had it on my desk for 35. And I'm very fond of it myself. I think it captures another aspect of. Andy also liked this picture. He was always very gracious. I didn't see him a lot afterwards, but you couldn't live in that era without running into Andy Warhol. He was all over the place. Well, I've never published that photograph. I was doing a story maybe for Robert Fraser.
Yeah,
So
that's
this
pretty
is
wild.
from my original German story. This is a wider angle. They cropped the top. John Cale was married to Betsy Johnson, the fashion designer, and I photographed her loft. John Cale was there, and I'm embarrassed, frustrated. It's one of the few Kodochromes that I have lost. The first reportage of people wearing army uniforms, and found I had a friend who was a model, and she had a shop in Saint-Tropez, Swedish, Lillemore, and she introduced me to all these kids, and it was the first publication of people wearing army uniforms.
That's an amazing
One of
picture.
the last covers of the Saturday Evening Post.
There it is, yeah.
So this is the Honorable Tara Brown. First psychedelic painted car, Sea Cobra. This is Robert Fraser Gallery. There's a Jon Naar photograph from 1938, Scotland, while I was still at university. Happened to have a print of it by coincidence. I didn't do the layouts, but I think they're pretty good. Well, you were onto something interesting there, though. It sounds like you'd like to get chapter 1, which is the FDR story, and chapter 10, which is the German underground.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll send you those. Oh, you were asking, was Andy? That's a good question.
Yeah.
Well, I knew some pretty remarkable artists. Joseph Albers, Barnett Newman, Alexander Lieberman, Henry Moore, Marino Marini, a lot of architects to the big time, Bauhaus, Marcel Breuer, Harry Bertoya, So was Andy any different from... Yes, well, of course, they were all different. They were all people whom I got to know through essentially my photography. I've met Joseph Albers through Luis Barragan in Mexico, whose house I photographed for New York, for Elle and a German magazine. I became friends with a lot of people I photographed. I photographed for Saturday Evening Post a woman in prison, an American woman in prison, charged with the murder of her husband or something. She wanted to work as my assistant. I have pretty good rapport, shall we say. Andy was probably everybody special, even unknown people I might meet in the street. The butcher with the horse butcher in France with a chopped off finger. Can you see that close enough?
Oh yeah, now I can see it, yeah.
Missing forefinger. I didn't meet those children in Strasbourg because I shot that one picture from a car window, but people seem to compose themselves very nicely for me. So Andy Warhol had a point, about the subject being involved in the... So I give him a lot of credit for that, even though the story doesn't sound that way. He was always very generous. He said, this is Jon Naar. He took that wonderful, he and I took that. So, no, I never... It's funny, I was a good friend of Duke Ellington. Never photographed him. Never wanted to photograph him, curiously. Although I suppose he would have sat for me if I'd wanted, we did a lot of... I never talked music with Ellington. He not interested in talking music. He introduced me to a couple of his musicians, one of whom still a very good pianist called Brooks Kerr. You should do a story on blind pianists. That Ellington said, this is Brooks Kerr. This is in my apartment, and he knows more about my music than I do.
Oh, okay.
Brooks and I still go. I can't describe why I photographed some people, not others. If I had recognized what Andy Warhol was going to become, as I said earlier, well, I would have taken a crate of soup cans, or I would have... Andy would have traded or given me a picture. He would have signed my portrait. He would have given me... it just never occurred to me. Well, I spoke last week at Knoll International, 200 people. They moved to Rockefeller Center, 1330 54th and 6th Avenue. So I went in, my son drove me in special for that. I take the train. Guggenheim's got a big show coming up on the German group I photographed of, it's called Zero Group. This is from my initial Germany. This is Joseph Beuys. I became quite friendly with Beuys because he and I are the same generation. He was in the Luftwaffe, and everybody said, "Oh, don't bother with Beuys, he's crazy." I said, "Why is he crazy?" "Well, he wears a hat." And I discovered he's wearing a hat because he's older than my age, because we were literally opposite. He was shot down over the Crimea. He was a bomber pilot. So we were able to relate to each other, even though we were on opposite sides of the war. We had more in common as enemies,
Yeah.
but part of that experience that maybe, me and a younger generation. Well, I have a Canon 110, S110, which is one of the best point and shoots.
Okay.
I also have a Fuji film, slightly larger, fixed lens Fuji, wonderful camera. I'm much more interested in taking the picture, getting the picture, seeing and observing. Seeing, I don't know if you've watched this wonderful new Sherlock Holmes series from BBC. Because he, I think his name is Nicholas Cumberbatch, a wonderful young actor. But Sherlock Holmes makes the difference between seeing and observing. So I've adopted that. But you're right, sharing is very, very important.
Thanks again, Jon. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're very good. You listen to my story.
Thanks. Well, you made it easy because it's
I like to share it. And as I said, I never know when I click that shutter where it's going to end up. Had some pretty exciting sharings, and I hope I have a few more. Publishing has changed. I had a deputy editor of Architectural Record, which is owned by McGraw-Hill, moderate the panel of my show at Knoll last week. I'm very much into art all day, and do you know Lauren Otis? And we need to really push that side of. You see, when I moved to Trenton 14 years ago, I moved like a lot of people, not because of Trenton's attractiveness or not, but because I couldn't afford to live in Manhattan anymore. And I was working, as I do now, somewhat with Washington on a number of things, more energy related stuff, and New York. And this house is 10-minute walk from the train station. I don't have a car, never owned a car in my life. But I said to everybody, because they said, "Why Trenton?" I said, well, Trenton could be the next Brooklyn. It could have been, it still could be,